30 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're live.
Good evening, and welcome to the April Morganton Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Kicking off tonight with old business review and approval of our March meeting minutes. Everyone's had an opportunity to review and see those. Any comments, additions, deletions? Hearing none, those will be approved. Lee, review of City Council action from the last meeting.
There were two items of business taken up at the last City Council meeting. The first was a rezoning at 103 and 107 Enola Road, requested by Dr. Alan Anton from neighborhood business to general business for 1.5 acres. And that public hearing was held. There was no opposition at the meeting. There was a question about fence heights and security of dogs from the facility. I think there's been some runaways that didn't want to go get their shots or something, and so there were some neighbors that were upset about that and wanted to try to make sure that we had some security around the fence and things. So we told them we'd certainly try to work with them on all that, and the owner did too. So we're working in that direction. But they approved the rezoning, and so that property is now general business. The second item of business was a zoning ordinance amendment to permit small machine shops less than 7,500 square feet within the general business zoning areas. Again, that public hearing was held. There was no public opposition to that request, and so that was also approved, and so that's now part of the ordinance.
All right. Our next item is for appearances from anyone in our audience that wants to address to the commission any items that are not on our agenda tonight. And seeing no one jump at the podium, we'll move on to new business. Item is consideration of a rezoning request submitted by Dr. Mark McMahon to rezone approximately 1.25 acres of property that's located at 1022 and 1034 East Union Street, and the request is from neighborhood business to general business. Lee, march us through that, please.
Okay, if you'll turn in your rezoning package to the evaluation. The property at 1022 and 1034 East Union Street is presently zoned neighborhood business. Neighborhood business zoning is a kind of a residential area commercial zoning. It allows office, service, and low-intensity commercial establishments, as well as all of the residential uses except for mobile home development. It does require specific performance standards to help minimize any adverse impacts that may occur in the surrounding residential area, such as minimum lot sizes, maximum building sizes, screenings from adjacent property owners, and hours of operation limitations. The requested zoning to general business is a general commercial service and warehousing district. It also allows all of the single-family, multifamily residential uses at high density. Again, it does not permit mobile home or mobile home development. The objectives of this particular district is to allow larger and more intensive commercial uses. They generally have good access to the major utility, to our major utilities, and also to a major street system. You can generally expect an increase in noise, light, and traffic impacts during daytime and evening hours for requests of this nature. Public service availability. The property is located at the intersection of Valdez Avenue and East Union Street. And Chad, if you'll pull up the map on the monitors, you can see the property. Okay, thank you. Outlined in blue in the center of the screen are the two properties in question. The pink area is currently neighborhood business, residential high single family up the Bowdy's Avenue corridor, and then residential medium conditional use in the Henry's Glen area across the road. Bowdy's Avenue and East Union Streets are publicly maintained roadways. East Union is maintained by the Department of Transportation. Bowdy's Avenue is maintained by the City of Morganton. Both are classified as major thoroughfares in the thoroughfare plan of the city. East Union Street currently has a traffic count of around 5,200 cars per day. This is down by approximately 2,000 trips over the past 10 years, which I found interesting. That corridor has seen kind of a steady decline of traffic over the years. Union Street has a design capacity of 11,000 vehicles per day, so it's certainly well under the carrying capacity. Bowdy's Avenue is a fairly low traffic count and at around 1,200 daily trips. There's no plans currently in the city's transportation plan or the state's transportation plan to widen either roadway. The properties have direct access to city water and sewer service. They're located along both roadways. There's 6-inch water lines along both roadways, and there's also a 16-inch water line along Bowdy's Avenue, which is one of our main distribution lines. Sewer service is also available by way of an 8-inch water line or an 8-inch sewer line along both roadways. Any of these lines would be capable of providing good service to a general business type use. The land development plan, the Mission 2030 plan, is indicating that commercial development exists and will continue to exist along the East Union Street corridor. You can see in green kind of that corridor, the way it's indicated on the Mission 2030 plan is as a mixed commercial residential corridor, and that has historically been that. It's an old corridor. Highway 70, Business 70 was the main route east and west prior to Interstate 40 being constructed. So that carried a lot of traffic, and the commercial development came during that period of time. The request, of course, with it being commercial and residential mixed use, would allow general business type request along the corridor. We feel like that works in, but that mixed use indicates that it has to be sensitive to residential uses as well, and so you want that redevelopment to occur along the corridor, and you don't want one use to necessarily overburden or overbear the other use. Future rezonings, the request is similar in nature to other areas that's adjacent to this property. We do anticipate other requests being made. If this piece of property goes to general business, then you can see the neighborhood business that's remaining in the general vicinity. It would be very difficult, also on this side of the road, to not rezone other areas to a traditional general business classification. Spot zoning, the request does exhibit some of the characteristics of spot zoning. You can see that if we change this to general business, then neighborhood business on these sides, residential here. So it would be kind of a smaller piece of property zoned differently than the rest, which goes back to the last item. There's not much reason why you wouldn't want to go ahead and zone the rest of it to general business. Impact to surrounding property owners. The primary impact that we see on the surrounding land use would be really more potential for traffic type movements there with the different types of uses, different operating hours. Businesses could extend their hours 24 hours a day depending on what the uses are. There could certainly be an increase in noise with those type of uses in the evening hours, and there's more types of uses allowed that would potentially create more noise. and there's always opportunities for aesthetic decline and environmental impacts if for certain general business type uses. Staff recommendation. We believe that it's very important to encourage redevelopment of older corridors and to try to find ways through zoning to incentivize that. We've seen some resurgence in this section of East Union Street over the past 10 years. We've seen some investment being made. There was a new church that was constructed across the highway from this property. There's been the Henry's Glen development. We've seen the properties on Valdez Avenue kind of maintain a strong residential character. We've seen some more investment in a few of the properties on up East Union Street. It's a struggle. It's not something that comes easy. It's hard to get folks to invest in these areas. Mark was certainly one of the few that's made an investment in this area, and he's been there since probably the late 80s, I think. So he's made that investment of commercial type development in the area. So, I mean, he's one of the contributors of that resurgence. We understand that. We have received some phone calls from some of the adjoining property owners that are concerned about potential uses that can be there that might create some issues. There are some uses in the ordinance that, like a tire change dealership or a mechanic shop, or I know that this particular one has dog kennels. You allow outdoor dog kennels outside all the time, those kind of things that could impact if a residential property is adjacent to that. The nice thing about a business owner's investment in an area is they come and they can leave. They're not there in the evening hours. A lot of times they're not there on the weekends. For residential people, usually they're there when the residential folks aren't there. So the main thing here is I think there's opportunities that we can open up more types of uses in this property and then the remainder of this corridor to hope for some new investment. But there probably needs to be a little bit of compromise on, it's not just a traditional zoning, maybe some conditions, agree to some conditions. The Henry's Glen Phase 3 development, which hasn't started yet, would be directly across the street. That development is already kind of struggling a little bit with the current economy, but there's been some nice homes built in that area. It certainly increased the values of residential living in that area. We don't want to discourage that either. There's been investments made there, just like Dr. McMahon's made his investments on the corner. Try to strike a balance there, make sure that everybody can be compatible and work with one another. And so our recommendation would be to seek out a conditional use request on this and see if there are some uses that some folks can get comfortable with that are over and above, and maybe hours of operation and those kind of things that are above what neighborhood business currently allows. So that would be our recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Any questions at this time for Lee?
I've got just one question on the future rezoning request. You say if this possible were to change to general business, there might be more requests. Are there any at this time, or is this just something that would normally follow a change in zoning like this?
It's much like the one on Enola Road, that we talked about last month. You kind of start, especially if you start in the middle of a corridor, the financial opportunities for marketing those properties, the value of those properties. If you allow more types of uses, that goes up, and so adjoining property owners generally see that as an advantage to them. They may or may not use it they may be able to keep the use the way it is today, but value-wise and marketing-wise, they've got an investment there. They generally, on a commercial piece of property, they're going to see that happening, and they're going to come back in and they're going to say, I won't mind the zone that way. There's no reason to turn them down when you do that, especially when you start that way. If you kind of work an area out, if it was coming out the other way, say it was over near where the East Union Street label is on your map, you kind of work it out slowly, you can kind of define a boundary and say, okay, now we're not going past this point. you start in the middle, you pretty much say, we're going to go both ways. We're going to work it both directions.
May I ask a question? How does this differ from Dr. Anton's last? Why was that not conditional use?
Dr. Anton's use, the Enola Road corridor is a growth corridor. We're seeing an increase in traffic counts. There's a TIP project that will start next April. It'll be a 4-lane divided section.
Familiar with that.
There's new signalization that's taking place at the old 18 interchange. That corridor is a growth corridor. This corridor is a redevelopment corridor. It's in decline. It's been in decline as far as traffic counts go, which is generally not an area that you want to see more intensive commercial development in. It's the traffic counts are changing. That's not uncommon. One of these days, 30, 40 years from now, the Enola Road corridor may turn around because the commercial development moves around. It moves to the highest traffic counts that you have in your community. They pick new spots, and then you're left with kind of what's, right. Then you're left with another East Union Street corridor of, okay, you got secondary, third uses in the life of the properties. They were designed for one thing, they're going to something else.
I have to confess some confusion here. When you were first explaining this, it sounded like you were trying to encourage businesses.
We are.
In that corridor. But if you have conditional use, doesn't that discourage it?
It just discourages some of the businesses. There's a long list of business uses that are allowed in general business.
Yeah.
Some are not allowed in neighborhood business.
Yeah.
Some of these are not allowed for a purpose. Nightclubs, bars, restaurants with outdoor dining or something of that nature, outdoor kennels, storage of wrecked vehicles, things that are a lot more intensive in commercial use than a neighborhood business area that may be adjacent to some residential uses. Okay, think about it in the terms of your neighborhood. Small commercial business closes at 6 o'clock. It may be something you're not there during the day anyway. It's closed. By the time you get home, there's no. A nightclub may go till 2 o'clock in the morning. Is that what you want? There may be no intention by the property owner to open a nightclub, to open a kennel, to open any of these things, or outdoor, with more intensive outdoor uses. That does not mean that it's not permitted and it couldn't happen there. So as a adjoining property owner, as a residential property owner, is his need for use of his property any more of a higher demand than it is for use of your property?
These same things you're describing, could that not also happen over on Enola Road?
It could, but that corridor is, again, changing. A lot of those residential units are getting taken with the roadway project that are in that area. It's a 4-lane divided section, whereas this is a little more traditional. It's not a high growth corridor. It's certainly something that can use some different types of uses and open up some more possibilities than what's there now.
That's never been the attractive entry into Morganton like it used to be when I first moved here many years ago. By encouraging more businesses there, would that not be conducive toward that idea?
Certainly could, but if you were going to buy the house right across the street that's in Henry's Glen development, is that a positive to you or negative to you?
Well, what I see about Henry's Glen, I drove out there and looked at it. This point at that intersection is just barely touching that, and a good portion of that has not been developed. And that's all I see of Henry's Glen is a lot more traffic being added to that intersection as it is developed. I don't know. I guess I'm just confused about the whole thing, Lee. How we can, on the one hand, encourage, on the other hand, it sounds like we're discouraging. So, but, maybe I just don't understand or know.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
I've got one more question. Lee, on the general business or just any zoning, when you add the conditional use to that, say on this piece of property, and eventually someone else comes in and says, well, I want my property zoned general business also, with that, in that immediate area, would that also attach a conditional use to that?
I think that's what we're suggesting, is that if you kind of start the trend that this is a conditional use request, then that opens the door for the general business use on the next piece, but they come through the same process. Now, we cannot force conditional use. The owner has to agree to it. You know, it's not something I can say. I'm suggesting that as a way to get the adjoining land uses compatible with one another in the best way possible. That it gives everybody an opportunity to kind of be reasonable about where what their responsibilities are in that neighborhood or in that particular location. It certainly doesn't have to be. I mean, we can open up to general business, and when the property owners come in, we can just like we did on Enola Road, start that process. And more than likely, this kind of paves the way for the rest of it, depending on what direction we go in.
Lee, is this property that's not a part of Henry's Glen or the third phase there? There's one right across kind of there at the point, which I think has been significantly upgraded, and I'm not sure of the age of that property, but it seemed like it probably at one time was one of the more substantial homes in that area that somebody's invested in and come back with. And I think to Charlie's point,
This one here.
yeah, okay. To Charlie's point, you know, the difference between that and Enola, there's already a number of residential units that have been abandoned, and also with the state hospital property out there. And also the state, not the city, is controlling that project and going to take, what, 13 to maybe 20 previously residential lots out. So, I mean, you really don't have as much control, the city doesn't, over that situation as maybe we do here. Is that a fair assessment or not?
I think that's a fair assessment. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, the Department of Transportation is kind of setting the stage there for more intensive commercial development with the divided 4-lane. There's already been some other requests out in that area for larger scale commercial development rezoning. So that seems to be a trend out in that area. This particular area, the newer development that's occurred is more residential in nature.
I was trying to, and that's the entrance to Henry Glen is somewhat screened also. I think of it somewhat in context of some places I've seen in north side of Hickory, for instance, where you have commercial up, and then all of a sudden you've got a little planned development back in there. Not that we necessarily want that, but I've seen that kind of encroaching together or whatever. But it may be more retail than those kind of situations, or neighborhood business actually with a planned community type environment that I'm comparing to. But I'm just trying to get a comparative here of where we've been and what we're doing. As to Charlie, I think.
Yeah, good, Bill. Anyone else, Lee? Tate?
The map shows a triangular piece of property. Is that the house that's next door? Does that include that house?
I have a residence just behind, it's on the same plot, okay, house. It's in another house which is leased as a business. So those are both my house. And the one across the street on Valdez Avenue is a residence that I lease as well.
You can see that brought up the aerial photograph there on the screen, so you can see that.
That's included.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's part of the
Very
problem.
good. Well, my comments on the rezoning is that the general business is with conditional use is a little bit softer zoning. It's still a buffer between residents and a more intensive zoning. Instead of being transitional right into general business, the fact that we do have the capability of making things conditional use makes it a little bit a softer zone differential, and makes it a little bit easier on the surrounding residential people, and gives you still more control as other property comes in on this general business. They have that same opportunity.
that it? Any other questions?
Are we putting any conditions on this rezoning?
Has not been requested.
Not at this time.
There is an existing variance on this property for some kennels that was issued a few years ago. At that time, there were some conditions placed as far as the kennel usage and how that would be operated. And that's one of the reasons, I guess, that we already know there's interest in the neighborhood and concern in the neighborhood about a use that would, if it's zoned general business, would open the door to remove the conditions off of that variance. And so, you know, knowing some of the history of that, taking that into account, I think that's the difference, Charlie. I mean, we advertised the case out on Enola Road, and the only condition that we heard come back was a fence height, and there wasn't that, which is not necessarily a use issue. It's more of a security issue, and that's the difference. I think we don't have any existing variances and conditions out on Enola Road on that property.
Roughly how many objections have you had by telephone?
2.
2, okay.
Okay, let me open the meeting up for a public hearing at this time. And we'll start off if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak against this rezoning request. Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of the request? Doctor?
Left or right?
Either one.
Gentlemen, my name is Mark McMahon, and I own a place of business at 1034 East Union Street, and I've requested a rezone from neighborhood business to general business. If you'll bear with me for about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to give you a little bit of history, then I'm going to give you some more information, and maybe you can make a proper decision here. About somewhere around 110 years ago, my grandfather, great-grandfather, walked out of a hollow in Asheville, or near Asheville, North Carolina, and came down to Morganton. He had 2 deaf children. This man was a farmer, and around 1902, on that piece of property, he started a farm and a blacksmith shop. I'm going to give you here some history of the businesses that have been on this corner in the past 100 years. He grew livestock, he raised vegetables for his family, and he was a blacksmith. About 40 years later, my grandfather took it over in 1945. He was a general businessman and operated a whole bunch of businesses himself on that corner. And then in 1988, I'll say 1988 as a proper date that I took over, but really and truly, I guess I've been doing or helping around the store down there for about 40 years. And I want to give you a partial list, okay, of the businesses that have been on that corner in the past years. This is a partial list. There was a farm, livestock, there was a blacksmith store, an iron worker shop, motorcycle repair center, all right, shop and garage, a honky-tonk that was commonly known as the Gold Mine, okay. It was a nightclub. I don't know how late it stayed open, but they say it was a pretty rough place. There was a service station there, a grocery store, Max TV started there, Burke Dairy started there in leased space, auto detail shop, used car lot, miniature golf course, Jeep dealership, a tire store, recapping shop, and currently a veterinary hospital and kennels, okay? Most of those uses are general business, so I'd say that we've got some history of doing general business on that corner. Since the 50s, I'd say that the residences in that neighborhood have gone down tremendously, okay? But general business use has gone up. One thing that you need to realize is that with 1,000 feet of my office is a general business zone on this side coming back into Morganton. I don't know if you realize that or not. Up the hill, past the Twin Circle Grill, and past Oxford Iron Works is general business. So just bear that in mind a minute. Now I want to give you, if you're standing on the rooftop of my animal hospital and you're looking due east, okay, due east, I'm going to give you a partial list of businesses that you can see starting in a circle going counterclockwise 360 degrees. There is a fuel distribution center, which is abandoned. There is an automobile repair shop, okay? There is a heating and air mechanical fabrication shop. There is a monument mortuary stone engraver. There is an antique store, which is abandoned. There is a hair salon beauty center. There is a Hispanic translation tax service center. Most of these businesses, by the way, I can hit with a rock from my roof. There is a furniture design craft shop. There is a burger restaurant. There is a welding machine shop. There is an archery range, abandoned. There's a pawn shop. There's a fire truck police supply and fire truck sales center. There's a mini storage center. There's a coin-operated car wash. There is some sort of county offices, which I don't know what they do there. There's a medical supply center. There's another automobile garage service center. There is a fishmonger, and there is a neighborhood store. That takes us almost back around full circle. Let's go over the hill, over the elementary school, which they say is soon going to be closed. We're going to fly over that. We're going to go over the Morganton Housing Authority projects. We're going to go over the cemetery, and we're back on Valdez Avenue, almost due east. Now, just before the abandoned fuel distribution center, until about 2 months ago, 2 houses up from my rental property, there was a methamphetamine manufacturing center. Okay? Now, I'm not trying to say that that was condoned by the city of Morganton, but it was there. My point is that general business is the preferred and obvious zoning for this district. As a matter of fact, I'm spot zoned as it is. You can literally walk a few steps down the street and be in general business up the street towards Morganton. The only businesses between us are the machine shop and the hamburger place, Twin Circle Grill, which, by the way, my grandfather built that as well back in the 50s. As to any question of whether any changes that I might make on this property, should it be rezoned, I would remind you that not only am I operating a business there full-time, I'm leasing business space to another business, and I'm leasing 2 residential properties. So there's no reason for me to go in there and do anything that would upset that community. The salvation of this portion of town is encouragement of business growth of any sort. That's the salvation. If that doesn't happen, I'm afraid we're going to see more crime, at least on the order of methamphetamine labs, and maybe worse. So this needs to be put right. It's spot zoned as it is. Last month, this board granted a rezone request for Healthy Pets Veterinary Clinic. That clinic, both businesses are in busy business corridors, both of them. They were both in neighborhood business zones. My business has multiple general businesses zoned within 1,000 feet. That business does not, or did not. And that's about all I got to say.
Thank you, Doc. Any questions for Dr. McMahon? Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience to speak in favor of the zoning request? Seeing none, I'm going to close that to the public and bring back to the board. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we rezone it as general business only.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there anyone to second that with a second? Any further discussion? Call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Okay, that item will go to the May 2nd, 2011 City Council meeting at 6 o'clock p.m. in this council chamber.
Any other business on our agenda for tonight, our discussion. I am remiss in introducing Jimmy Kirksey. I'd like to welcome you to our commission and stepping forward and volunteering. I hope you enjoy your tenure. And we certainly are glad to have your smiling face here with us.
Youth is always good to be introduced to an organization.
Thank you, Charlie.
Seeing no other items for our discussion, I'll move that we adjourn.
That's it.
We'll move.
Lowered the average.